He saves a dying boy. CEO's little girl ran to Janitor. They beat my brother, he's dying. Lawrence drops the mop, drops three enforcers, and keeps Noah breathing with skill no janitor should have. But when security blocks 91 and the cameras go dark, who inside Bland Enterprises ordered the beatdown? And will they silence him next? The golden-rimmed glass doors at the corridor's end were built to muffle executive conversations, but not everything. A dull thud followed by a boy's choked cry made Lawrence Elliott's mop stop mid-stroke. He stood motionless in the wash of fluorescent light, every nerve suddenly alive. He was just maintenance, a man paid to erase the messes of the powerful, but the soldier buried beneath the green uniform was clawing to the surface. Before he could decide whether to move or look away, the doors burst open. A little girl, no older than 8, blue dress billowing, stumbled into the marble hallway, her small chest heaving with silent, gulping sighs. She saw him standing there, invisible in his janitorial greens, and ran. She didn't call for help. Her panic was beyond words. She crashed into him, small hands gripping fistfuls of his pant leg, looked up with eyes wide and drooped, and spoke the sentence that ended 5 years of quiet penance. They beat my brother. He's dying. The words detonated something inside Lawrence, tearing through the discipline he'd built like tissue paper. In that heartbeat, years of practiced invisibility burned away. The janitor dissolved. The field medic returned. "Stay close to me," he said, his voice low and steady, a tone that cut through terror and demanded obedience. He didn't wait for her to answer. He guided Sherry behind the industrial cleaning cart and pushed through the golden doors. The scene inside was a clash of wealth and savagery. In a private lounge that overlooked the city through floor-to-ceiling windows, 3 men in dark suits loomed over a teenage boy crumpled near an overturned desk. Noah Bland. Lawrence recognized him from the lobby portraits, always smiling, always beside his father. Now blood streaked his temple, his breathing shallow and ragged. He was conscious, barely, one arm bent at an unnatural angle. He tried to push himself up, teeth gritted, but his body betrayed him. The enforcers turned slowly, annoyed at the interruption. One held a leather sap. Another cracked his knuckles. The third, clearly in charge, smiled. "Wrong floor, janitor." Lawrence moved like water. The first man, closest to Noah, never saw the mop handle coming. Lawrence swung it low, hooking behind the man's ankle and yanking forward. The enforcer's legs went out from under him, and Lawrence drove the wooden shaft across his throat as he fell, pinning him to the carpet with surgical pressure until his eyes rolled back. The second man lunged, fist cocked. Lawrence sidestepped and redirected the punch past his shoulder and drove his palm into the man's elbow joint. The hyperextension made a wet pop. The man screamed and dropped. The third enforcer, the one with the sap, was faster, more cautious. He feinted left, then swung the weighted weapon at Lawrence's temple. Lawrence ducked, felt the rush of air above his scalp, and came up inside the man's guard. His hand chopped down on the man's collarbone. The bone gave with a sickening crack. Before the man could fall, Lawrence hooked his leg and guided him down, using his own momentum to slam him face first into the desk's edge. The leader backed toward the window, one hand reaching inside his jacket. Lawrence closed the distance in 2 strides. He caught the man's wrist before the weapon cleared leather, twisted it behind his back, and swept his legs. The enforcer hit the floor hard, gasping, and Lawrence's knee pinned him there. Silence fell, broken only by Noah's labored breathing. Lawrence's eyes went to the boy. He crossed the space in a heartbeat, dropping to his knees beside him. The combat training that had just been lethal shifted seamlessly into something gentler. "Noah," Lawrence said, his voice calm but firm. "Can you hear me?" A faint nod. Before we continue today's beautiful story, take a moment to subscribe. Like and hit the bell. It's the best way to support us and never miss another moment of romance. Let's continue. Lawrence's hands moved with practiced precision, checking the pulse at Noah's neck. Thready, too fast, tilting his head back to clear the airway, examining his pupils, one sluggish, signs of concussion. He ran his fingers over Noah's skull, feeling for fractures, then checked the ribs, the twisted arm. "Sherry," he called over his shoulder, "is there a first aid kit in here?" Her voice small and shaking. "In the cabinet, by the bar." Bring it to me, sweetheart. You're doing great. As she scrambled to obey, Lawrence stripped off his green work shirt, tearing it into strips. He stabilized Noah's arm with a makeshift splint, applied pressure to the bleeding temple wound, and kept talking. Low, steady, grounding. You're going to be okay. Breathe with me. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Noah's good eye focused on him, confusion flickering. Who are you? Lawrence didn't answer. He was already cataloging exit routes, calculating how long before reinforcements arrived, and wondering how deep this rot went. But that question, who are you, hung in the air like smoke. The man Lawrence Elliott had been was supposed to be dead. He'd buried that soldier under mop water and disinfectant, under 5 years of silence and penance. He'd sworn never to let violence touch him again. Not after the things he'd seen, the choices that still kept him awake at night. Yet here he was, hands slick with someone else's blood, a child's trust clinging to his sleeve, and a teenager's life balanced on the edge of his skill. And somewhere in the pristine halls of Bland Enterprises, people who sent these men were watching, waiting, erasing evidence. Lawrence's jaw tightened. The quiet life he'd built was gone. But maybe, just maybe, saving this boy could be the first step towards saving himself. Behind him, the elevator chimed. The doors began to open. The elevator doors slid open. Christopher Bland stepped into his private lounge, flanked by 4 security officers in crisp black suits, their hands hovering near concealed weapons. He was already talking sharp, clipped sentences into his phone about quarterly projections, when his voice died mid-word. The scene before him didn't compute. 4 men sprawled unconscious across his Persian rug, blood on the marble. His teenage son propped against the overturned desk, pale and shaking, bandaged with strips of torn green fabric, and his daughter, his baby girl, clinging to the sleeve of a janitor. Christopher's phone slipped from his hand, clattering against the floor. "Sherry," his voice cracked. He crossed the room in 3 strides, dropping to his knees beside her. His hands hovered over her shoulders, afraid to touch, afraid she might shatter. "Are you hurt? Did they?" "I'm okay, Daddy." Her voice was small but steady. "He saved us. He saved Noah." Christopher's gaze snapped up to the janitor. The man stood motionless near the window, still as a statue, watching them with eyes that held too much. Green uniform torn at the shoulder. Blood, not his, on his forearms. Calm. Utterly, unnaturally calm. "Who are you?" Christopher demanded. "Maintenance," the janitor said quietly. "Maintenance." Christopher repeated the word like it was a foreign language. His eyes traveled from the unconscious enforcers to Noah's makeshift splint, to the methodical way the man had positioned himself between the children and the door. "Maintenance doesn't do this." The janitor said nothing. Cole Avery, the head of security, stepped forward, a granite slab of a man in an expensive suit, his silver hair immaculate even at this hour. "Mr. Bland, we need to secure this floor immediately." His voice was smooth, authoritative, the kind that made decisions sound inevitable. "No police, not yet. We don't know what we're dealing with." Christopher turned. "My son was attacked. In my building. We're calling—" "Sir," Avery's hand came up, placating. "Think about what this looks like. 4 men beaten unconscious by a janitor. The press will crucify us. Questions about your security, about who has access to your family. Let me contain this first. Quietly. Then we bring in the authorities with a clean narrative." Christopher's jaw worked. The CEO in him understood crisis management, optics, damage control, but the father in him was screaming. Lawrence watched the exchange, his expression unreadable. Then his eyes drifted to the wall panel near the bar. The security camera cluster. 3 status lights that should have been glowing green, all dark. His gaze shifted to the DVR rack tucked into the built-in shelving. The cooling fans were running too loud, the way they did when processing intensive tasks. Deletion protocols. Someone was scrubbing the footage in real time. "Mr. Bland," Lawrence said, his voice cutting through Avery's pitch. "Your son needs a hospital. Now." Avery's eyes narrowed. "We have a private physician on call. He has a concussion, possible subdural hematoma, and a fractured ulna. He needs imaging and a trauma team. Lawrence's tone didn't rise, but something in it made Avery take a step back. I've kept him stable, but the window for complications is narrow. Christopher looked at Noah, at the way his skin had taken on a grayish pallor, and the decision crystallized. Call an ambulance. Sir, if we could just... Now, Cole. Avery's mouth tightened, but he pulled out his phone and walked toward the corner, voice low. Sherry tugged on her father's sleeve. Daddy, they said something. The bad men. Christopher crouched, brushing hair from her forehead. What did they say, honey? Her voice dropped to a whisper, and Lawrence leaned in slightly to hear. They said Noah shouldn't snoop. That's why they came. The words hung in the air like a blade. Christopher's face went very still. Noah was researching something? Files, Sherry said, on his computer. He showed me, said the numbers were wrong. Lawrence filed that away. Noah had found something. Someone had sent professionals to silence him. And now someone was erasing the evidence. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. The ambulance ride was a blur of compression bandages and vital checks. Lawrence sat beside the gurney, one hand maintaining pressure on Noah's arm, the other holding a battered flip phone, the kind you bought with cash at convenience stores. Click. He photographed the bruising pattern on Noah's ribs. Click. The defensive wounds on his knuckles. Click. The mark on his temple where the sap had connected. The paramedic across from him raised an eyebrow. You law enforcement? No, Lawrence said, just careful. Noah's eyes fluttered open. My dad? Following in his car. You're going to be fine. Lawrence kept his voice steady, reassuring. Just stay still. At County General, the ER exploded into controlled chaos. Nurses descended, wheeling Noah through double doors marked trauma. Lawrence moved to follow, but a hand caught his shoulder. That's far enough, friend. The man was mid-30s, tailored suit, polished shoes, corporate, not medical. He wore a visitor badge with Bland Enterprises logo. Behind him, a security guard stood with crossed arms. I need to take the patient's clothing, the suit said. Chain of evidence. Company protocol. Lawrence studied him. No badge, no law enforcement identification. Just smooth authority and an expectation of compliance. No, Lawrence said. The suit blinked. Excuse me? The boy's clothes stay with hospital security until police process them. Lawrence's voice didn't rise. Didn't need to. If you're with the company, you can file a request through proper channels. I don't think you understand. The man stepped closer, lowering his voice. Mr. Avery sent me personally. This is a sensitive matter. We need to control the... No. The security guard's hand drifted toward his belt. Lawrence saw the movement, calculated distances, angles, and then a new voice cut through the tension. Is there a problem here? A doctor appeared, scrubs still splattered with someone else's emergency, eyes sharp and deeply tired. Her badge read, Dr. Sarah Chen, Trauma. The suit smiled, all corporate charm. Just coordinating with hospital administration on evidence custody. Evidence stays with us until the police log it. Dr. Chen's tone was flint. This is a medical facility, not a corporate office. If you're not family, you need to leave my ER. The suit's smile tightened. He glanced at Lawrence, then at the doctor, and seemed to recalculate. Of course, my apologies. He produced a business card, set it on the nurse's station, and walked away. The security guard followed. Lawrence watched them go, watched them pause at the exit to make a phone call, watched the way the two's shoulders tensed when he spoke. Dr. Chen turned to Lawrence. You the one who stabilized him? Yes. She looked at the torn strips of green fabric still wrapped around Noah's arm, at the precise placement of the pressure bandages. And something shifted in her expression. Military? Lawrence didn't answer. She nodded slowly, understanding what silence meant. He's lucky you were there. Then she paused. But whoever beat that kid wasn't trying to kill him. Not yet. They were sending a message. I know, Lawrence said quietly, which means they're not done. She held his gaze. And you know that too. Lawrence thought about the cameras going dark, the suit trying to take evidence. Sherry's whisper. They said Noah shouldn't snoop. Yeah, he said, I know. Dr. Chen handed him her card. If anything else happens, Anything, you call me directly. I don't care what the company wants. Lawrence pocketed it, then turned toward the waiting room windows. Outside, the city glittered like broken glass. Somewhere in one of those towers, someone was watching, planning, erasing. And a janitor they'd never noticed had just become a problem they couldn't ignore. Lawrence returned to Bland Enterprises just after midnight. The lobby was tomb silent, security reduced to a single drowsy guard at the desk who barely looked up as Lawrence swiped his badge. He pushed his cart toward the service elevator, wheels squeaking against polished marble. Just another ghost in a green uniform finishing the night shift. But when the elevator doors closed, his posture changed. The private lounge on the executive floor was exactly as they'd left it. Avery's people hadn't arrived yet, or maybe they were waiting for deeper night. Crime scene tape stretched across the doorway. Lawrence ducked under it. He moved through the space with clinical precision, photographing bloodstains with his flip phone before retrieving cleaning supplies from his cart. The blood came up easily, still fresh, not yet oxidized. He worked in methodical sections, spiral pattern outward from each stain, the way he'd been taught. Near the overturned desk, something caught the light. A glass shard no bigger than his thumbnail, with a partial print pressed into dried blood. One of the enforcers had grabbed Noah's water glass before it shattered. Lawrence pulled a small evidence bag from his cart, the kind janitors use for lost jewelry and wedding rings, and carefully transferred the shard. Legal, documented, chain of custody intact. 20 minutes later, the lounge looked untouched, pristine, as if violence had never darkened its marble floors. Lawrence wheeled his cart into the service corridor and didn't stop until he reached the janitor's closet on the third floor. His closet, the one with the broken lock he'd never reported. The space was narrow, barely 6 feet deep, lined with metal shelving stacked with supplies. But in the back corner, behind the industrial mop buckets, Lawrence had built something else, a shrine to the man he used to be. He knelt and pulled out a battered ammunition tin, the kind soldiers kept letters in. The metal was dented, scarred, older than his time at Bland Enterprises. Inside, dog tags on a beaded chain, tarnished but readable. Elliot Lomnel Onag, a photograph, edges worn soft. 3 men in desert fatigues, arms slung over each other's shoulders, grinning like they'd live forever. Lawrence was the one on the left, younger, unbroken. The man on the right was Miles Kane. Beneath the photo, a piece of paper with a phone number written in careful block letters. No name, no area code. Just 10 digits that represented the last thread connecting Lawrence to the life he'd abandoned. He pocketed the paper and closed the tin. At 1:47 a.m., movement in the lobby caught his attention. Lawrence had positioned himself on the mezzanine level, cleaning windows that didn't need cleaning, watching the marble expanse below through reflection. A courier entered, young, nervous, carrying a brushed aluminum case with a biometric lock. The courier didn't go to the front desk. He went straight to the service elevator, the one that required executive clearance. Lawrence abandoned his squeegee and moved. He took the stairs, descending 3 at a time in soft-soled shoes that made no sound. By the time he reached sub-basement level, the corridor lights had dimmed to emergency mode, motion sensors inactive, security cameras pointed at walls. Someone had prepared the road. Lawrence followed the courier's echoing footsteps through the concrete maze. Server rooms lined the hallway, each door marked with alphanumeric codes. The air thrummed with the white noise of cooling systems. The courier stopped at SB07. The door opened before he could knock. Lawrence pressed himself into a maintenance alcove, 20 feet back, and watched through the gap between a conduit pipe in the wall. 3 men stood in the server room's blue-lit interior. Cole Avery, unmistakable in his tailored suit, and 2 others Lawrence recognized from lobby portraits. Harold Dent, VP of Finance, silver-haired and sharp-featured. Victor Reese, Chief Operations Officer, built like a linebacker gone soft. The courier handed over the case. Avery pressed his thumb to the lock. It clicked open, revealing neat rows of hard drives, each labeled with dates and department codes. Surveillance? Dent's voice carried into the hallway. Sanitized, Avery said. Footage from the executive floor, elevator logs, badge access records. All of it. And the janitor? Reese's tone was uneasy. Avery's smile was cold. Being handled. By morning, he will be a non-issue. Lawrence's jaw tightened. The courier left, but the three executives remained inside, voices dropping too low to hear. Lawrence waited until the courier's footsteps faded, then moved. The case sat on a server rack near the door, temporarily unguarded while the men argued over a tablet screen. Lawrence's hand went to his badge holder. The RFID chip inside was standard issue, used for tracking janitors' movements through the building. He'd modified 3 of them last year, curious about the technology, bored during long night shifts. He pulled a paper clip from his pocket, wedged it into the badge's corner seam, and twisted. The plastic casing popped open. Inside, a chip no bigger than a grain of rice. He peeled it free, pressed it to the underside of the case's handle where the metal formed a small lip, and was gone before the adhesive fully set. The payphone on Fifth Street smelled like piss and cigarettes. Lawrence fed it quarters and dialed from memory. It rang 4 times. Then, yeah, rough voice, West Coast accent, immediately awake despite the hour. Miles. Silence. Then, Jesus. Ghost? That you? I need a favor. 5 years. 5 years of silence, and you call at 2 in the morning for a favor? But there was no heat in Miles Kane's voice, just the old familiar rhythm of men who'd bled together. Talk. Deleted surveillance footage. Corporate server. Probably backed up to cloud. I need it resurrected. That's illegal, brother. So is attempted murder. Miles exhaled slowly. What did you step in? Something bigger than a janitor should handle. And yet here you are, handling it. A pause. Send me access points. I'll need 12 hours minimum. I've got 4, maybe less. Lawrence, then. There's a kid, Miles, 15 years old. They beat him because he found something. And now they're erasing the proof. The line went quiet. Lawrence could picture Miles in whatever apartment he haunted now. Screens glowing, fingers already flying across keyboards. The same restless energy that had made him the best intelligence analyst in their unit. There's also a live trace, Lawrence added. RFID tag, transmitting on. The payphone's light flickered. Lawrence looked up. Across the street, the bland Enterprises tower stood against the night sky, a monument of glass and steel. Every light on floors 3 through 7 went dark simultaneously. Then the streetlights, then the traffic signals at the intersection. Miles, well, I see it. Someone just killed power to a 6-block radius centered on your location. Lawrence's hand tightened on the receiver. Through the tower's windows, he could see flashlight beams moving. Security or something else. And in the lobby, the elevator indicator lights were frozen. Locked floors, sealed exits. They know you're still in the building, Miles said, voice tight. Ghost, you need to move. Now. But Lawrence was already watching a black SUV pull up to the tower's service entrance. 4 men got out, moving with military precision. Not security, not police. Cleaners. Send me that trace protocol, Lawrence said quietly. And Miles, if I don't check in by dawn, don't finish that sentence, Mariam. Lawrence hung up. The tower loomed ahead, dark and waiting. Somewhere inside, Christopher Bland slept, unaware his company was bleeding from within. Somewhere inside, evidence of conspiracy hummed on sanitized servers. And somewhere inside, men with orders were hunting the janitor who'd seen too much. Lawrence adjusted his uniform, checked the evidence bag in his pocket, and walked toward the darkness. Time to become invisible again. This time, by choice, Chapter 4. Sherry's map. Lawrence made it past the cleaners. Barely. By the time power returned 20 minutes later, he'd moved through the darkened tower like smoke. Service shafts, maintenance crawl spaces, routes only invisible people knew. The men hunting him never looked up, never checked the ventilation ducts, never thought to search the places beneath their polished world. Now, at 4:17 a.m., he stood outside Christopher Bland's private residential floor, badge in hand. The door opened before he could swipe. Sherry stood in the doorway, still wearing her blue dress, eyes red-rimmed but dry. I knew you'd come back, she said quietly. Behind her, the penthouse apartment was warmly lit. Cream walls, family photos. The kind of wealth that whispered instead of shouted. Christopher Bland sat at the dining table in a wrinkled dress shirt, tied discarded, looking 10 years older than he had that morning. Lawrence, Christopher stood. Security said someone breached the building during the blackout. I thought. He stopped, seemed to recalibrate. Are you hurt? No, sir. They were looking for you. I know. Christopher studied him. This janitor who moved like a soldier, who'd saved his children and then vanished into the night. Why did you come back? Lawrence's eyes went to Sherry. Because she asked me to. Sherry had been drawing. The dining table was covered with crayons and printer paper, a child's frantic attempt to make sense of chaos. She'd sketched the attack, crude stick figures, blue dress, green uniform, but one drawing caught Lawrence's attention. A room, golden walls. A black rectangle labeled bag, and a door with a spiral on it. Tell me about this one, sweetheart, Lawrence said, settling into the chair beside her. Sherry's small hand touched the paper. When Daddy took us to work last week, Noah wanted to see the big room where the important people talk. We weren't supposed to go in, but the door was open. The boardroom, Christopher said quietly. There were men inside. They didn't see us. Her finger traced the spiral door. Noah said that's the special door, the one that needs 2 keys. Lawrence looked at Christopher. Vault? Document archive, contracts, acquisition records, proprietary research. Board members and C-suite only. Christopher's jaw tightened. What did Noah see, Sherry? One of the men put papers in the black bag. He was talking on the phone. He said a name. Her brow furrowed, trying to remember. Marrow? Marox Industries, Christopher breathed. Our primary competitor. The pieces clicked together. Corporate espionage. Noah had stumbled onto the handoff, probably took photos. The conspirators found out and sent their message. Lawrence watched Sherry's hands tremble against the crayon. Hey, he said gently. Look at me. She did. You did something really brave today. You ran for help when your brother needed it. That took courage. I was scared. Brave people are always scared. They just don't let it stop them. Lawrence shifted his chair closer. Want to learn something that helps when you're scared? She nodded. It's called combat breathing. Soldiers use it, doctors use it, even superheroes probably. That earned a tiny smile. Put your hand on your belly. My belly right here. Good. Now breathe in slowly. Count to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 2, 3, 4. Now let it out. 2, 3, 4. They breathed together, Sherry's small chest rising and falling in rhythm with his calm instructions. Christopher watched, something raw and painful crossing his face. After a minute, Sherry's shoulders relaxed. It works. It always does, Lawrence said. Christopher waited until Sherry fell asleep on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, before speaking. I didn't know. His voice was barely above a whisper. I didn't know they were in danger. I didn't even know Noah was researching. He stopped, rubbed his face. I've been so focused on earnings reports and investor calls that I stopped seeing my own children. Lawrence said nothing. Some confessions didn't need responses. She ran to you, Christopher continued. Not security, not the front desk. She ran to the janitor because he was there. The word carried weight. I built this company from nothing. Sacrificed everything. And for what? So my son gets beaten in my own building while I'm 3 floors away. Oblivious? You're here now, Lawrence said quietly, because you made me look. Christopher met his eyes. I owe you more than I can ever repay. You don't owe me anything. I did what needed doing. That's exactly why I owe you. Christopher leaned forward. Who are you really, Lawrence? And don't say maintenance. Before Lawrence could answer, his flip phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. Package delivered. Check, secure email. Miles. Lawrence pulled a battered laptop from his cleaning cart. Yes, he'd carried it through the blackout and opened an encrypted connection. Christopher moved behind him, watching over his shoulder. The video file loaded in fragments. Grainy. Timestamp from yesterday morning. The executive lounge from a high corner angle. Noah entered, laptop under his arm, looking for somewhere quiet to work. Then the door burst open. 3 men. No warning. The assault was brutal, professional, designed to terrify and incapacitate without killing. Yet, Christopher's breath hissed between his teeth. The timestamp jumped. 5 minutes missing. When it resumed, Noah was unconscious. The men were searching his laptop, photographing the screen. Then the camera angle shifted. Hallway view, Cole Avery approaching a security panel, swiping a master override card. The camera feed went black. He'd disabled the system himself. That son of a... Christopher's fist slammed the table. Sherry stirred but didn't wake. The next clip showed the server room. Partial audio, Avery, Dent, and Reese discussing containment protocols and offshore transfers. Enough to prove conspiracy, not enough to prosecute without more. "I'm calling an emergency board meeting," Christopher said, voice ice. "Tomorrow morning. I'll tell them we've uncovered a security breach and need full disclosure from all department heads. If they're guilty, they'll panic, make mistakes. They'll run," Lawrence warned. "Let them try. Christopher's executive mask was back, hard and calculating. "I want this exposed, all of it. I want them to know what happens when you threaten my family." The flip phone vibrated again. Lawrence checked it. A map overlay, GPS coordinates moving in real time. The RFID tag he'd planted on the case. It was heading north through the building, elevator shaft, rising fast, toward the roof. "Miles says the case is on the move," Lawrence said, watching the blinking dot ascend. "Helipad level." Christopher checked his watch. "It's 5:43 a.m. Helicopters scheduled for executive transport at 6 o'clock. They're running now, before you can trap them in the boardroom." The two men looked at each other. "If they get on that helicopter with the evidence," Christopher started. "They won't." Lawrence was already moving, grabbing his cart, checking the tools strapped to its frame. "But I need you to do something for me." "Name it." "Keep Sherry here. Lock this door. Don't open it for anyone except me or the police." "Lawrence, someone has to stop them, Mr. Bland. And you need to stay alive to testify." Christopher's throat worked. Then he nodded. Lawrence headed for the door, then paused. "For what it's worth, your kids know you love them. They just want more of your time." He was gone before Christopher could respond. The elevator pinged. Lawrence stepped inside, pressed the button for the rooftop access level, and watched the numbers climb. Outside the windows, dawn was breaking over the city, gold light touching glass towers. Somewhere above, a helicopter's rotors were beginning to turn. And 3 men who tried to bury the truth were about to learn what it meant to be hunted by a ghost. The executive boardroom occupied the 42nd floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the city like a painting. Christopher Bland stood at the head of a Brazilian walnut table that could seat 20, flanked by his remaining board members. 9 men and women in $1,000 suits, their face in masks of professional concern. Harold Dent sat 3 seats down, silver hair perfectly coiffed, expression grave. "Christopher, we're devastated about Noah. If there's anything we can do, find out who did it," Christopher said flatly. Victor Reese shifted in his chair across the table. "We've already authorized a full security review. Cole's team is examining every access log, every..." "Where is Cole?" someone asked. As if summoned, the doors opened. Cole Avery entered, closing them with a decisive click. He positioned himself against the wall, hands clasped, the picture of professional vigilance. Christopher didn't miss the way Avery's fingers brushed his phone. A signal. In the corner, Lawrence Elliott pushed a cleaning cart into the boardroom's attached corridor, the glass-walled passage that connected to the executive lounge. He wore earbuds as if listening to music, head down, just another custodian invisible to power. But his eyes were mapping the space. Fire suppression system. Sprinkler heads every 8 feet. Electrical junction box. North wall, behind the decorative gold vase on its marble pedestal. Door hinges. Standard pin and barrel, accessible if you knew where to look. Emergency exits, 1 at each end, both requiring badge access. And Christopher had given him a master badge 2 hours ago. "I've asked you all here," Christopher continued, voice tight, "because someone inside this company tried to kill my son." The room went silent. That's a serious accusation, Dent said carefully. It's a fact. Noah discovered evidence of espionage, corporate documents being sold to Maroc Industries, and when he found proof, Christopher's voice cracked just slightly. They sent men to silence him. Christopher restarted. The lights died. Every screen, every overhead fixture, the entire floor plunged into darkness. Outside the windows, dawn light provided only gray silhouettes. The magnetic door locks engaged with a simultaneous clunk. Someone screamed, then the corridor door burst open and four masked men poured into the boardroom, moving with tactical precision. Not security, not police. Enforcers. Nobody moves! The lead man's voice was muffled behind black fabric. He carried a tactical baton. Hands on the table, now! Christopher's hand went to his jacket, where Sherry was hiding. She'd followed him. Insisted she wouldn't be left behind again. He'd relented, let her hide in the lounge during the meeting, thinking she'd be safe with the doors locked and security nearby. He'd been wrong. Now she pressed against him, small and terrified, as the masked men advanced. Lawrence moved. The gold vase weighed maybe 30 pounds, decorative, expensive, completely impractical. He lifted it from its pedestal and hurled it through the corridor's glass wall. The crash was enormous. The vase struck the electrical junction box dead center. Sparks erupted, arcing across wet morning condensation on the glass. The fire suppression system, sensing electrical heat signature, triggered automatically. Water exploded from the ceiling. Sprinklers drenched the boardroom in seconds, soaking the masked men, fogging the windows, turning expensive carpet into swamp. The electrical short killed the magnetic locks with a dying whine. Lawrence grabbed his cleaning cart's broom, industrial-grade steel-reinforced handle. He jammed it into the corridor door frame at a 45-degree angle, wedged against the floor. When the nearest masked man tried to pursue, the angle turned the broom into a tripwire. The man went down hard, skull cracking against marble. The second enforcer was faster. He vaulted the fallen man, batting raised. Lawrence pulled the broom free, gripped it like a staff, and swung low. The shaft caught the man's knee. Cartilage popped. As he fell, Lawrence drove the broom's end into his solar plexus. Non-lethal. Went on, but the man wouldn't breathe right for a week. Inside the boardroom, the other two enforcers had frozen, disoriented by darkness and water. Lawrence grabbed his industrial flashlight, 5-pound maglite, military surplus. He clicked it on and off in rapid strobes, blinding pulses that shattered night vision. One enforcer rushed forward anyway. Lawrence sidestepped, let him pass, then grabbed a leather executive chair and wedged it behind the man's ankles. The enforcer sprawled. Lawrence was on him instantly, using the chairs to armrest as leverage to pin the man's throat. Christopher, get them out! Lawrence's voice cut through chaos. Service corridor, north exit. Christopher grabbed Sherry, shielding her with his body, and started shepherding board members toward the emergency door. Some were frozen in shock. Others scrambled, heels slipping on wet carpet. The last enforcer, the leader, pulled something from his belt. Not a weapon, a radio. Execute Plan B, he barked into it. Targets escaping. Initiate. Lawrence's fire extinguisher blast hit him full in the face. CO2 and chemical foam erupted from the nozzle, filling the man's mask, freezing exposed skin. He staggered back, clawing at his face. Lawrence followed with the extinguisher itself. 10 pounds of steel cylinder swung like a bat. It connected with the man's temple. He dropped. Lawrence turned. Christopher had the door open, employees flooding through, heading for the service stairwell, the one maintenance used, the one executives forgot existed. Go, Lawrence urged. Don't stop until you reach ground level. Christopher hesitated at the threshold, Sherry in his arms. I'm right behind you. But Lawrence was looking at Harold Dent. The VP of Finance hadn't moved toward the exit. Instead, he'd pulled out his phone, fingers flying across the screen. In the strobing emergency lights, his face was a mask of cold calculation. Then Dent's eyes met Lawrence's. Too late, Janitor, he said. Across the table, Victor Reese was already moving, not toward the exits, but toward the far wall where a concealed door led to the executive elevator. In his hand, a small aluminum case. The hard drives. The evidence. Reese slammed through the door and was gone. Dent followed, pausing just long enough to smile. By the time you reach the roof, we'll be in international airspace. Lawrence sprinted, but Dent triggered something on his phone. The concealed door's lock engaged. Biometric, not mechanical. No way through. He pivoted, heading for the main elevator bank, but his flip phone buzzed. A message from Miles. Multiple police calls flooding dispatch. Shots fired. Bland Enterprises. ETA 4 minutes. Lawrence's jaw tightened. The conspirators had called in a false active shooter report. By the time police sorted through the case, the helicopter would be long gone. He hit the stairwell, taking steps 3 at a time, heading up. Behind him, sirens began to wail. Ahead of him, the thrum of helicopter rotors spooling to life vibrated through the building's bones. The rooftop was 12 floors up. Lawrence ran faster, the stairwell filled with smoke on the 48th floor. Not fire, deliberate. Someone had triggered smoke canisters to slow pursuit, to buy time. Lawrence pulled his shirt over his nose and kept climbing, lungs burning, legs screaming. 51st floor. A maintenance closet door hung open. His doing from 3 weeks ago when he'd oiled the hinges and disabled the lock. He ducked inside without breaking stride. The pack was where he'd left it. Canvas tool bag, wedged behind cleaning supplies. He grabbed it, checked contents by feel. Zip ties, adjustable wrench, duct tape, wire cutters, compressed air canister, the mundane arsenal of a man who fixed things. Today, he'd break them instead. 54th floor. The roof access door was already open, wind howling through the gap. Lawrence burst onto the helipad. Dawn had painted the sky in shades of gold and blood. The wind at this height was brutal, tearing at his clothes, carrying the deafening thunder of helicopter rotors. A corporate Bell 429 sat on the landing pad, its turbines whining as they spooled up to full power. Victor Reese was climbing aboard, the aluminum case clutched to his chest. Harold Dent stood beside the aircraft, one hand shielding his eyes from rotor wash, the other holding a phone to his ear. Both men turned when Lawrence appeared. "You've got to be kidding me," Reese shouted over the noise. He leaned out of the helicopter door. "You're just a janitor." Lawrence walked toward them, tool bag in hand, movements calm despite the chaos. The rotor wash tore at him, tried to push him back, but he leaned into it like he'd leaned into sandstorms in places these men would never see. "That's what makes me invisible," he said. Reese's confusion lasted exactly 3 seconds. Then Lawrence dropped low and slid under the helicopter's fuselage. The underbelly of a Bell 429 was a maze of hydraulic lines, fuel connections, and sensor arrays, complex to the uninitiated, but Lawrence had spent 6 months maintaining fleet helicopters during his 3rd deployment. He knew where everything connected. His hands found the fuel quick disconnect coupling, standard safety feature designed for emergency maintenance. He twisted the release collar counterclockwise. It resisted, over-tightened by some paranoid mechanic, but his wrench gave him leverage. The coupling gave way with a hiss of pressurized vapor. Fuel didn't gush out, the system had check valves, but the helicopter's computer immediately registered a fault. Lawrence reached up and taped the fuel pressure sensor with duct tape, triggering a false reading that would scream, "Catastrophic leak," to every warning system in the cockpit. He rolled out from under the aircraft just as the pilot's voice crackled over external speakers. "Abort! Abort! We have a fuel system failure." The turbines began winding down. Reese's face went purple. "Override it! Get us in the air!" "Sir, if we lift off with a fuel leak..." "Do it!" But the pilot was already shutting down, following procedure, unwilling to decipher someone else's escape plan. Reese jumped from the helicopter, aluminum case still in hand, and rushed Lawrence with the desperate fury of a cornered animal. He swung the case like a club. Lawrence sidestepped, caught Reese's extended wrist, and twisted. Basic joint manipulation. The wrist only bent one way, and Lawrence was forcing it the other. Reese's fingers spasmed open. The case clattered to the concrete. Lawrence drove his palm into Reese's solar plexus. The big man folded, gasping. A leg sweep took him down, and Lawrence secured his wrist with a zip tie in under 3 seconds. Dent was backing away, hands raised. "Now wait just a minute. We can make a deal. You want money? I can..." The sound of sirens cut him off, not one or two, dozens. The entire city seemed to be converging on Bland Enterprises, a symphony of law enforcement and emergency response. Below, in the streets, red and blue lights painted the dawn. Dent's phone slipped from his hand. "It's over," Lawrence said quietly. Behind the movement, a figure emerged from behind the rooftop mechanical housing, a young woman in a business suit, hair whipping in the wind, eyes wide with terror. She'd been trapped there when the helicopter landed, cornered by a rotor wash too powerful to cross. "Please," her voice barely carried over the dying turbines. "I can't. The wind." Lawrence moved immediately. He positioned himself between her and the helicopter, using his body as a windbreak, and extended his hand. "Walk toward me, one step at a time." She was shaking, feet uncertain on the smooth concrete. The rotor wash still gusted, trying to push her toward the edge. "Eyes on me," Lawrence said, voice calm and firm. "Not the edge, just me." She took a step, another. Her hand found his. He pulled her behind the mechanical housing, into shelter, and she collapsed against the wall, sobbing with relief. "You're okay," Lawrence said. "What's your name?" Jenny Flores, junior analyst." She looked up at him, mascara streaked. "I came up to get cell reception for an early call, and then the helicopter landed and I couldn't." "You're safe now." Police burst onto the rooftop from 3 stairwell doors simultaneously, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Lawrence raised his hands slowly, making no sudden movements. Dent and Reese were on the ground in seconds, officers swarming them. A lieutenant approached Lawrence, radio crackling. "You the one who called this in?" "No, sir, but those 2 men are suspects in corporate espionage and attempted murder." "And you are?" "Maintenance." The lieutenant studied him, the zip ties, the tool bag, the calm demeanor of someone who just disabled a helicopter and stopped 2 fleeing criminals. "Maintenance, right." Lawrence's flip phone buzzed. He pulled it out carefully, keeping his movements visible. A message from Miles. "Urgent. Avery bypassed ground floor security. Exited through loading dock with small black case. Live trace shows him heading to secondary location." Lawrence's blood went cold, a backup drive. Avery had copied the evidence, left Dent and Reese as sacrificial distractions while he slipped away. Another message appeared, this one from Christopher Bland. "Sherry not in safe room. Security sweep coming up empty. Please respond." The pieces crashed together with sickening clarity. Avery hadn't just taken evidence, he'd taken leverage. Lawrence looked at the lieutenant. "I need to go." "Sir, you're going to need to stay for questioning. A child is missing. The man who took her is armed and has a 10-minute head start. We'll dispatch units." "He's ex-military, former intelligence. By the time your units mobilize, he'll be gone." Lawrence's voice stayed level, but something in his eyes made the lieutenant step back. "I can find her, but I need to move now." The lieutenant's radio crackled. "All units, Amber Alert issued. 8-year-old female, blue dress." Lawrence was already running. Behind him, the sun cleared the horizon, flooding the rooftop with golden light. Below, the city stretched out. Millions of places to hide, to disappear, to hurt a child who'd seen too much. But Cole Avery had made one mistake. He'd assumed the janitor would stop at the roof. Lawrence hit the stairwell at a sprint, phone already dialing Miles. "I need that trace," he said, "and I need it now." Christopher Bland had built an empire on calculated decisions, risk assessments, strategic pivots. But standing in the empty safe room where his daughter should have been, staring at her abandoned stuffed rabbit, every bit of executive control shattered. "She was here." His voice came out strangled. "The door was locked. Triple redundancy. Biometric access only. How?" The security officer beside him shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, the logs show Cole Avery accessed this room 17 minutes ago. Override code. He told the detail it was your order, that Sherry needed to be moved to a more secure location." "I gave no such order." "We know that now, sir." Christopher's phone rang. "Unknown number." He answered with shaking hands. "Mr. Bland?" Cole Avery's voice was smooth, almost regretful. "I apologize for the inconvenience, but your daughter is safe with me. For now." "Where is she? If you hurt her?" "I won't." "Not if you're reasonable. I have a helicopter standing by at a private airfield." All I need is 12 hours and a confirmation that you won't pursue charges. Once I'm clear, you get Sherry back. Unharmed. You have my word. Your word? Christopher's hand tightened on the phone until his knuckles went white. You tried to kill my son. I tried to preserve what your family built. You were too blind to see the vultures circling. Morocco's, the offshore interests, all of it. Dent and Reese were amateurs. I was protecting you. By selling us out? By ensuring survival, but you forced my hand. So now we negotiate. Avery's tone hardened. 12 hours, Christopher, or the next time you see Sherry, it'll be on the news. The line went dead. Lawrence hit the lobby running, security officers scattering as he vaulted the front desk and accessed the surveillance room. The guard on duty started to protest until Lawrence flashed the master badge Christopher had given him. I need camera access, all floors, last 30 minutes. Sir, I can't just... Lawrence's hands were already on the keyboard. Years of watching, of mapping patrol routes and blind spots, of understanding how invisible people move through visible spaces. He knew every camera in this building. More importantly, he knew which ones the cleaners used to avoid being recorded taking breaks. Floor B2, service corridor. Camera 14 had a dead zone near the eastern stairwell. The lens angle missed a 3-foot gap. Lawrence rewound footage, watched Avery walk through frame carrying what looked like a maintenance bag. Except the bag moved. There, Lawrence breathed. He switched to camera 22, parking sublevel, Avery's SUV still in its reserved spot. So he hadn't left the building yet, which meant Lawrence pulled up the freight elevator logs. One car stopped on the loading dock level 8 minutes ago. Hadn't moved since. He was out the door before the guard could ask questions. The loading dock was a concrete tomb at this hour, delivery bays empty, fluorescent lights flickering. Lawrence moved silently between pallets of office supplies and industrial cleaning equipment, following the sound of a child's muffled crying. The service tunnel, the old maintenance access, built when the tower was constructed in the 70s, now mostly used for storage. Lawrence had explored it during his first week, mapping every turn, every exit. He found them at the junction where the tunnel split toward the parking structure. Cole Avery stood with his back to a support pillar, one arm wrapped around Sherry's chest, holding her against him. She was struggling, tears streaming, her small hands pushing uselessly at his grip. Avery's other hand held a service pistol. I was wondering when you'd show up, Avery said. The invisible janitor. The hero nobody noticed until it was too late. Lawrence stopped 20 feet away, hands visible. Let her go, Cole. Can't do that. She's my exit strategy. There is no exit. The building's surrounded. Every airfield within 50 miles is flagged. Then I improvise. Avery's smile was bitter. You know what I've learned in 30 years of security work, Lawrence? Rich men outsource their morals. They want their money clean, their conscience clear, and someone else to get their hands dirty. I did the dirty work, and when it went sideways, I became the liability. So you take a child? I take leverage. Avery adjusted his grip. Sherry whimpered. Now back away or... Sherry, Lawrence said calmly, cutting through Avery's words. Remember what we practiced? The breathing. She looked at him through tears, small chest hitching. In for 4, Lawrence said, his voice steady as stone. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sherry tried, failed, tried again. Good girl. Hold for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. What are you doing? Avery demanded. Out for 4. 1, 2. Lawrence's hand drifted toward his pocket. Avery's gun tracked the movement. 3, 4. Sherry's breathing steadied, her eyes locked on Lawrence's. When I say now, Lawrence said quietly, close your eyes tight. Can you do that? She nodded, barely. Don't play games with me, Avery warned. Lawrence's hand emerged from his pocket, holding the Maglite flashlight. In one fluid motion, he angled it toward a polished metal junction box on the wall behind Avery. Now, sweetheart. Sherry squeezed her eyes shut. Lawrence clicked the flashlight on. The reflected beam caught Avery square in the face, 5,000 lumens bouncing off steel. He flinched, turned his head, and his grip on Sherry loosened for a fraction of a second. Lawrence closed the distance like a shadow. His hand shot out, struck Avery's wrist, redirecting the gun toward the ceiling. His other hand, fingers rigid, precise, drove into the nerve cluster at the side of Avery's neck. The brachial plexus stunned, non-lethal, instantly incapacitating. Avery's legs gave out. He collapsed, the gun clattering away. Sherry stumbled free, and Lawrence caught her, swept her behind him, positioned himself between her and the fallen man. "Is he dead?" she whispered. "No, just sleeping." Lawrence knelt, checked Avery's pulse, steady but slow, then his pupils, responsive. He'd wake up with a killer headache and no ability to move for several minutes, but he'd live to face trial. Lawrence pulled zip ties from his pocket and secured Avery's wrists behind his back. The sound of running footsteps echoed through the tunnel. Christopher burst around the corner, security team behind him, and froze at the sight. Sherry broke free from Lawrence and ran to her father. Christopher dropped to his knees, caught her, held her like she might disappear if he let go. "Daddy, I'm here, baby. I'm here. I'm so sorry." Over Sherry's shoulder, Christopher's eyes found Lawrence. There were no words adequate. Just a father's raw gratitude and a question that would haunt him. "How many more like you exist that I never see?" Lawrence simply nodded and turned his attention back to Avery, checking his vitals again. The medic, not the warrior, no gloating, no triumph, just the quiet competence of a man who'd saved a life and would do it again without hesitation. His flip phone buzzed. Miles, offshore web cracked, wire transfers, shell companies, 3 years of data. But the backups corrupted. If we don't broadcast in the next hour, their legal team buries it forever. Need your call. Lawrence looked at Christopher, still holding his daughter, at Avery, unconscious and bound, at the police entering the tunnel, weapons drawn. The evidence existed. The conspirators were caught. But without public exposure, lawyers and money could still twist the narrative, bury the truth, let the rot fester. Sometimes saving lives meant more than stopping threats. Sometimes it meant making sure justice had teeth. Lawrence pulled out his phone and typed a single word to Miles. Broadcast. Miles Kane worked from a basement apartment in Seattle, surrounded by 6 monitors and enough computing power to run a small country. His fingers flew across 3 keyboards simultaneously, routing encrypted files through a web of servers that would take federal investigators weeks to untangle. "Ghost, you sure about this?" His voice crackled through Lawrence's earpiece. "Once this goes live, there's no pulling it back." Lawrence stood in Bland Enterprises' lobby, watching police escort Cole Avery out in handcuffs. Sherry was safe in her father's arms. Noah was recovering in the hospital. The immediate threat had ended, but the rot ran deeper than 3 conspirators. "Do it," Lawrence said. "Your call." A pause. "Uploading now. Multi-stream broadcast. Every major news outlet, regulatory body, and financial watchdog gets the package simultaneously. Wire transfers, surveillance footage, board communications, offshore account records. The whole cancer. Make sure Noah's name is in the lead. He found this. He paid the price. He gets the credit. What about you?" "I'm nobody. Keep it that way." Miles was quiet for a moment. "You know they're going to figure out who stopped this." "Maybe, but they don't need to." "Still trying to be invisible, Ghost?" "Just trying to do what's right." The lobby monitors, usually displaying stock tickers and corporate messaging, flickered. Then filled with data. Surveillance footage appeared first. Noah being attacked in the executive lounge. Time-stamped. Brutal. Undeniable. The assault played on every screen in the building, on every news site Miles had breached, on financial terminals across the globe. Then the money trail. Wire transfers from Bland Enterprises accounts to shell corporations in the Caymans, Singapore, Luxembourg. Millions funneled through dummy accounts to Morocco's industries and foreign interests. 3 years of systematic theft, laid bare in spreadsheets and transaction logs. Then the emails. Dent to Reese, Reese to Avery, Avery to offshore contacts. Conversations about containment, elimination of exposure. Permanent solutions to the Noah problem. A security guard near the front desk gasped. Is that real?" Lawrence didn't answer. He watched employees gathering, phones out, faces shifting from confusion to horror to rage. Within 3 minutes, the news alerts began. Breaking, Bland Enterprises executive corruption exposed. Developing, teen assault linked to corporate espionage. Urgent, federal regulators descend on Bland Tower. By minute 5, the building's main entrance flooded with reporters, cameras, federal agents. The Securities and Exchange Commission, the FBI, international authorities whose jurisdictions had been violated. Harold Dent and Victor Reese, still in police custody on the roof, found their phone calls to lawyers interrupted by federal agents reading additional charges. Corporate espionage, wire fraud, racketeering, attempted murder. The charges kept multiplying. By minute 10, Maroc Industries' stock had cratered. Trading halted. Their CEO issued a panicked statement denying knowledge, but Miles had already routed their internal communications to the same regulatory bodies. The shell companies they'd used to receive stolen data collapsed like dominoes. Lawrence slipped away from the lobby chaos and took the service elevator to the executive floor. The corridor where this had started, golden-rimmed doors, marble floors, the faint scent of disinfectant, was empty now. He retrieved his cleaning cart from where he'd abandoned it hours ago and began to mop. The motions were automatic, rhythmic. The world outside could fracture and reform, but floors still needed cleaning. Blood still needed removing. Order still needed restoring. His phone buzzed. A news alert. Anonymous source provides evidence in Bland scandal. Teen hero. Noah Bland credited with uncovering conspiracy good. The narrative was forming correctly. Noah as the brave whistleblower. The conspirators as villains. Justice as inevitable. No mention of a janitor. Christopher Bland stood at a hastily assembled press conference in the building's media center. Sherry beside him, Noah visible on a video call from his hospital bed. 3 days ago, Christopher began, voice steady despite exhaustion, my son discovered evidence of systematic corruption within this company. When he attempted to report it, he was attacked, silenced. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions. Christopher raised a hand. The evidence you've all seen today is real. The conspiracy was real, and my own security chief was complicit. He paused, something raw crossing his face. I built this company believing that success justified distance. That empire required sacrifice. I was wrong. He looked directly into the cameras. 3 board members and my head of security betrayed everything this company should stand for. They've been arrested. They'll face justice, but that's not enough. Starting today, Bland Enterprises will undergo complete restructuring, independent oversight, transparent accounting, and most importantly, his hand found Sherry's shoulder. We will value the people who make this place run. All of them. A reporter called out, Mr. Bland, who provided the evidence? Who stopped the conspiracy? Christopher's expression shifted to something unreadable. An employee, someone whose name you may never know, someone who shows up every day, does their job with honor, and asks for nothing in return. His voice dropped, but the microphones caught it. Someone who reminded me that true family strength doesn't come from corner offices or quarterly earnings. It comes from doing what's right when no one's watching. Can you identify? No, and I won't. Some heroes don't want recognition. They just want the world to be a little better than they found it. Lawrence was halfway through mopping the executive corridor when small footsteps echoed behind him. He turned. Sherry stood in the hallway, still wearing her blue dress, rumpled now, tear-stained, but she wore it like armor. Behind her, Christopher approached more slowly, giving his daughter space to make her request. Daddy says we're having dinner with our hero, Sherry said, voice small but determined. She looked up at Lawrence with eyes that had seen too much and still believed in good. Heroes come, right? Lawrence set down his mop, crouched to her level. Sweetheart, I'm not a hero. Heroes are people like your brother who stood up even when it was dangerous. I just showed up. That's what heroes do, she insisted. They show up when you need them. Behind her, Christopher's eyes glistened. Lawrence felt something crack inside his chest. The armor he'd built over 5 years of penance, of running from who he'd been. This child, who trusted him when the world fell apart, was asking him to stay. Please, Sherry's hand found his sleeve. the same grip she had used when she begged him to save her brother. You promised you wouldn't leave us. He hadn't promised that. Had he? But looking at her face, at Christopher's quiet hope, at the corridor he'd cleaned 1,000 times that somehow felt different now, cleaner in ways that had nothing to do with disinfectant, Lawrence realized something. Maybe invisibility wasn't the penance he needed. Maybe being seen, being trusted, was the harder path, the braver one. Okay, he said softly, I'll come to dinner. Sherry's smile could have powered the city. As she ran back to her father, Christopher mouthed 2 words. Thank you. Lawrence nodded and returned to his mop. The corridor still needed cleaning. The world still needed order. But for the first time in 5 years, Lawrence Elliott felt like maybe, just maybe, he was cleaning up more than floors. He was cleaning up the wreckage of his own past, one quiet act at a time. 3 weeks later, the lobby of Bland Enterprises gleamed under autumn sunlight, streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. The marble floors reflected gold light, polished to mirror brightness. Not by Lawrence this time, but by a crew of custodians who now wore uniforms with their names embroidered on the chest. Small change. Meaningful one. Lawrence stood near the reception desk, watching employees pass with morning coffee and purposeful strides. Some nodded to him now, remembered his face. A few even knew his name. Visibility took getting used to. Lawrence, he turned. Christopher Bland approached, looking more rested than he had in weeks. The lines around his eyes had softened. The corporate armor he wore seemed lighter somehow. Mr. Bland, Christopher, please. He gestured toward the service quarter. Can we talk? Somewhere private? The janitor's closet on the 3rd floor hadn't changed. Same metal shelving, same smell of cleaning solution and industrial soap. But when Christopher stepped inside and closed the door, the small space felt different. Less like a hiding place, more like a confessional. Noah's coming home tomorrow, Christopher said. Full recovery, physical therapy for the arm, but the doctors say he'll regain full mobility. That's good news. He wants to meet you. Properly. He remembers someone stabilizing his arm, keeping him calm, but the trauma made everything fuzzy. Christopher's voice caught slightly. He knows you saved his life. Lawrence said nothing. Saving lives was the bar. It didn't require gratitude. I've spent the last 3 weeks rebuilding this company from the ground up, Christopher continued. New board, independent oversight, transparent accounting. But there's one more thing I need to fix. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. Head of Emergency Preparedness, 6-figure salary, corner office, company car. Your job would be crisis response, employee safety protocols, security consultation. Christopher held out the envelope. You'd be making sure what happened to Noah never happens to anyone else here. Lawrence looked at the envelope but didn't take it. That's generous, he said carefully, but I'm not the corner office type. I know, that's exactly why I'm offering it. Christopher's expression was earnest. Lawrence, you see things other people miss. You move through spaces no one else thinks about. That perspective is invaluable. There are people better qualified. No, Christopher's voice was firm. There are people with better resumes, but qualifications aren't the same as character. I need someone who won't compromise, someone who shows up when it matters. Lawrence was quiet for a long moment, weighing the offer against the life he'd built, or the life he'd hidden in. What if we did something different, he finally said. Christopher waited. Keep the emergency preparedness work, the safety protocols, but not as a title, as a mission. Lawrence's eyes drifted to the cleaning supplies, to the tools of invisible work. Use that money to train every custodian, every security guard, every person in this building on basic emergency response. Make everyone capable of being first responders. You want to create a program. I want to invest in people nobody sees, the night shift workers, the maintenance crews, the ones who are already everywhere but get ignored. Lawrence met his eyes. And scholarships for their kids, so the children of janitors and security guards have the same chances as the children of CEOs. Christopher stared at him, and something shifted in his expression. Respect deepening into something close to awe. You'd still decline the office. I'd keep cleaning floors, but I'd also teach people how to save lives. Lawrence's voice was steady, certain. That's the work that matters. Christopher extended his hand. Deal. But you're taking at least a consultant's salary. I won't negotiate on that. Lawrence shook his hand. Fine, but it goes into the scholarship fund. You're an impossible man to repay. Then stop trying. Just be the father your kids need. Saturday morning, Riverside Park. The grass was impossibly green under October sun, the kind of green that only existed in temperate climates after summer heat had broken. The sky stretched overhead in endless blue, unmarred by clouds. And the light was pure gold, spilling through turning leaves and painting the world in warm tones. Lawrence sat on a park bench watching. Noah Bland threw a frisbee with his good arm, laughing as it sailed wide. His sister Sherry chased it across the lawn, blue dress replaced by jeans and a windbreaker. But her spirit unchanged. She caught it, spun, and threw it back with perfect form. Christopher sat beside Lawrence, coffee in hand, simply watching his children play. I miss so much, he said quietly. Years of Saturdays I can't get back. You're here now, Lawrence said. That counts. They sat in comfortable silence. Two men who'd seen their worlds nearly collapse and somehow built something stronger from the rubble. Sherry ran over, breathless and grinning. Mr. Lawrence, come throw with us. I'm good here, sweetheart. But you're part of our team now. She grabbed his hand, tugging insistently. Heroes don't sit on benches. Lawrence let himself be pulled to his feet. As they walked toward the open grass where Noah waited, he said, You know, I've been thinking about what you said about heroes. That they show up? Yeah. He knelt down, meeting her eyes. But there's more to it. Heroes don't wear capes or uniforms. They don't need titles or recognition. They're the people who do what's right when no one's watching. The teacher who stays late. The nurse who holds a patient's hand. The stranger who helps someone who's fallen. Like you, Sherry said simply. Like your brother, who stood it up even when it was dangerous. Like your dad, who chose truth over reputation. Lawrence smiled. Heroes are everywhere. You just have to notice them. She considered this with the gravity of childhood wisdom. Then I'm going to notice everybody from now on. That's all anyone can ask. She hugged him, quick, fierce, trusting, then ran back to Noah, shouting about new frisbee rules she'd invented. Christopher joined Lawrence on the grass, and together they watched the children play. Around them, the city hummed with its usual chaos, traffic, distant sirens, the pulse of millions of lives intersecting. But in this pocket of green beneath blue sky, bathed in gold light, everything felt still, purposeful. Lawrence thought about the man he'd been, the combat medic who'd seen too much, lost too much, tried to disappear into penance and cleaning supplies. He thought about the last 3 weeks, police statements, federal investigations, Christopher's quiet revolution within Bland Enterprises. The world hadn't fixed itself. Corruption still existed. Danger still lurked in corners. People still needed saving. But maybe that was the point. Heroes didn't fix the world. They just showed up day after day and made it a little better than they found it. One mop stroke at a time, one saved life at a time, one child believing in goodness at a time. Lawrence Elliott, former soldier, current janitor, accidental hero, allowed himself something he hadn't permitted in 5 years. Peace. Not the peace of forgetting, the peace of rebuilding, of being seen and choosing to stay visible, of carrying his past without letting it bury him. Sherry's laughter rang across the park, bright as sunlight, certain as dawn, and somewhere in the marble halls of Bland Enterprises, floors still needed cleaning. Tomorrow, Lawrence would return to that work, but he'd carry this moment with him, this gold and green and blue afternoon when everything broken had found its way toward whole. Thank you, Christopher said quietly, eyes on his children, for reminding me what actually matters. Lawrence just nodded. Some truths didn't need words. They just needed someone willing to show up and live them.